kill it, A lot of things happen to a person when alone. At first the calmness is peaceful, enjoying independence. Before long, solitude is more like a sentence, no matter where reside in the thoughts of a poem. Much soul searching is done, retrospective vantage point of the place you are and what you've come from. Some find God.
This is episode 16, and we have a special guest with us today on a topic that I'm...
No hesitation in that. You are focused. I like this. I like the way 16. I like this. No question about it. We know what episode we on.
Yeah. Before we were kind of going back and forth, like, what episode is it? Blah, blah, blah. But we have Dr. Kate Pate. She is a neurophysiologist. Did I get that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show. And just to kind of get these things out of the way, if you could follow her on Instagram at doc.pate. I'll put a link in the video here, and you guys can follow her there. She's doing some great stuff, which is what we're gonna talk about today. So I'll just kind of let you kind of start getting into like letting us know what you do, what your background is, and what have you, and then we'll go from there. We're just two curious guys, and we're gonna chime in and ask questions, and all at the same
notes.
time.
I'm a good note taker. I will be taking notes.
Is that a crayon? You're taking crayon notes with crayon?
I mean, it makes me feel like it's a crayon.
Oh, okay.
Right on. Well, thanks for having me. First of all, I really appreciate it, and I appreciate what you guys are doing to get the word out, spread some knowledge, and to talk about these important topics. So thank you. As far as my background and who I am, so I have a PhD in neurophysiology, and I've been doing research in a ton of different areas over the years, some even completely unrelated to neurophysiology, but really what my primary interest has been neurotrauma. And outside of that, the other things I've been working on have been more like military medical related. So like emergency medicine, combat casualty care, prolonged field care. And over the course of, my career, I've worked in academia, and I was a professor in a research setting. I also then transitioned and was a professor at one of the medical schools here in Colorado. And I taught physiology to first and second year students, and then moved on from there, had a really good opportunity in industry and worked at a small business. And that was primarily focused on, that's when things shifted for me to focusing more on the military, like trauma medicine side of things, and creating new like medical devices for the battlefield. And then I started my own company based off of that work. But through this entire time of working in this military space, I started to see, the majority of my friends are veterans or still active duty. And part of that is my work. And part of it is I come from a military family and have two brothers who served. And so it's always been kind of a community I've gravitated towards. It feels like, family to me in some way. And so through all of this stuff, I started to realize that there were these, massive gaps in how mental health is being handled in the veteran community, not necessarily by veterans like themselves as a, fault of their own, but just the lack of tools given the infrastructure and system that's supposed to support veterans just wasn't really getting the job done. And in fact, was like dropping the ball in major ways and leaving people without really good options. And so for me to see all of that and feel like that's super fucked up and not okay, I started to gravitate more towards the mental health side of things within the veteran community, and shift my focus away from like trauma medicine and medical devices, and really want to make more of an impact in the mental health arena. And so when I started to realize that and kind of move in that direction, there were other things that just started falling into my lap, or maybe, I don't know what people's beliefs are, maybe it's divine intervention or what it was, but I started to cross paths with these really incredible organizations who were veteran owned and operated, but also focused on helping veterans. And one of them was Heroic Hearts Project. And they're focused on using psychedelic medicines, plant medicines, specifically ayahuasca, to help veterans who are struggling with mental health issues. And PTSD, or PTS as I like to call it, is the primary one that we're focusing on, but it really any struggles. And so I started to see that there was this whole other side of how people could be helped through plant medicines. And I started working with Heroic Hearts Project, and that sort of snowballed into so many other opportunities. And for me, being a neurophysiologist, I was like, show me the science. And like, I dove into the research, the nerd that I am. And I was like, how do I understand this stuff? And what is it really doing? Is it people just, tripping balls in the middle of, the forest and, having fun and whatever, like, is out? Or is
sign up at?
is there more to it? And so the more I read about it, the more I understood it from a neuroscience perspective, and the potential in some of these psychedelics for healing is like on a psychological level, but also on like a really physical level is incredible. And so that's what I've been working towards mostly lately, is really trying to make people aware of what's out there, what these options are for various things, from traumatic brain injury to post-traumatic stress, but really like destigmatizing it too, because the fact of the matter is that suffering is universal, but the veteran community has suffering in arena due to the things that people are exposed to and the things that people experience that you wouldn't as a civilian. There's just certain things you wouldn't experience. Not to say that it's worse or harder. I mean, there are people who live in war-torn zones, or grow up where you're not safe even walking down the street, and there's constant murder around you and things like that, where there's different stressors, but there is a unique part of being in the military and being involved in combat and being trained to take a life and all of those things that kind of compound that general stress and threat response. So anyway, through all that, I just got really passionate about this work, and I've just been trying to spread the word about it.
That's good, and thank you for doing that. And also, like, kind of, I mean, that's a lot to unpack there, but it's really huge that you're taking a stance. I know you said something has shifted for you, and that must have been very important, like of a shift in the sense that. And the general populace, I mean, I'm generalizing here, but like most physicians are not willing to go out on a limb and try to do the research or even start considering alternative methods of other than Western medicine, in that sense of because of the reputation, they don't want people like lose their practice or what have you, people to look at them in a different way. Yeah. But honestly, I feel, I mean, personally going through about 5 different programs, and I've kind of done like the other part of it, and I mean we can get into that, but I just commend you for actually just stepping out, noticing that there has to be something else. And I kind of like you, of course. I mean, I went into the research, but I'm not a neurophysiologist either. I'm just a person that was trying to figure out an answer. And that's one of the rabbit holes I went down was the ayahuasca. I didn't participate in any ceremonies or what have you, but I was pretty damn close to buying a ticket and going, to Peru or South America or somewhere to try to. But even that on its own was kind of sketchy. I was like, I'm gonna go down there. I could be at some random person's house and they're giving me like some type of mix of NyQuil and some other stuff, and I'm like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I didn't have, and the way that kind of came to me was through another veteran podcast that I was listening to when I first got out, and he was talking about how he went down there and his experience and how he was on a bunch of different pharmaceuticals, and then they had to like detox him pretty much before he was allowed into the ceremony and what have you. And so that's kind of where the door opened for me in that realm. And so I've kind of it's still like on the back burner for me, and I'm still kind of like watching it. I just kind of shifted my focus, especially once I found mountain biking. That kind of allowed me to use the physical exertion and just being outside and kind of help me in that way as well. But it's definitely still something on my peripheral right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's definitely your experience of trying, a number of different things and having things not work out. Like, it's not like what I think happens to folks. And I don't know if this is, for you guys, I don't know if this has been your experience, but people say, hey, try this treatment, or this is supposed to work for PTS or TBI, or this is supposed to help with depression or anxiety or whatever. And you you jump through the hoops, you try the things, and it doesn't work. And then you think that it's your fault, or it's like, I'm too broken, that's not going to work, or I'm just not doing it right, I'm somehow fucked up, and therefore, I just can't do that. And the truth is, it like makes people feel worse when they're told this is supposed to help you and it doesn't. And then it's like, yeah, right? Like, that sucks. And that's what our system is doing to people, because they're either being overpromised something, or the solutions we have are like half measures. They're just really not effective. And people get down to, this point of desperation where folks are like on the verge of taking their lives. And we know in the veteran community that this is an epidemic in and of itself, is veteran suicide. And, before people get there, it's like all hope is lost. And so people often get to that point and they're like, there's nothing else. And then psychedelics all of a sudden come out, and it's like, well, I never considered that before, but nothing else has worked. So let me at least just look at this stuff and see what this is about. And that's where people start to learn, like you said, you did some research, you start to get curious, and then you're like, well, I never would have considered this, but I'm not, at my wit's end here, so I'll try it. And that's where people are coming to it from. And I wish that it didn't take that, getting so far down that path for people to realize that there is this potential solution. Again, like, you can't guarantee that it's going to help people, but it's the most effective thing I've ever seen for a number of different mental health struggles. And I think your spidey sense, I don't know what you want to call it, but like your sense of, I don't know if I want to just jump on a plane and go to Peru or the jungle, because like, that is important. A place that people go to get healing should definitely be vetted, because it's becoming more popular, and there's this whole tourism side of psychedelics now. And it's really important work. And especially with something like ayahuasca, it can be dangerous if people are on SSRIs or other medications. So you want to make sure that like you're in good hands, and you shouldn't just, go jump at the first sign that someone says, hey, I have psilocybin, or I have ayahuasca, you should go sit in this circle. It's like, well, let me find out more about this, supposed shaman and the medicine, and like where you guys are getting it and all that, because it matters. It's important. And the last thing you want is to like, be it your, the last straw, and you're throwing a Hail Mary hoping that this is going to work for you, and then have a bad experience.
Right.
So that's really, I'm glad that you decided to kind of pump the brakes and wait for the right time.
Yeah, me too. I mean, because I was close, spoke with my wife about it, and I kind of just really thought about it for a long time, because I was at that point where I was on SSRIs, and I was on them for like 5+ years, maybe longer. And I was kind of getting to the point where I was like, I don't even know. And I had many conversations with the VA and other, health professionals that were in my treatment. And I was like, I don't know where the line is anymore as far as like my emotional state, because I'm on these SRIs and they're like kind of muffling my emotions.
I had to write this down. So for all of us that do not know, what is SSRI? We don't know. You're walking over that. I don't know.
I'll let the doc explain it.
Okay. I had to write it down because you just walked over. But
sorry.
Rewind, guys. Rewind, rewrite.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Sorry. Yeah, thanks. That's a really good point. So SSRIs are what are known as selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And they're often the go-to medication for somebody who is dealing with depression, sometimes anxiety, but typically depression is the main one. And then also for post-traumatic stress, they can also be prescribed. It's sort of the VA and many psychiatrists, even outside of the VA, it's the go-to medication, because we we know kind of how they work. They affect the serotonin system, which is, it's very complicated, but to oversimplify it, it's like the good feelings. Like you have serotonin and dopamine released when you have, along with a bunch of other neurochemicals, when you have like these really good experiences and good feelings. Typically they're the ones that are involved. But serotonin is also really important because it's involved in what's called a process that's called neuroplasticity. So basically your brain cells have all these different communication pathways with each other. So your brain is interconnected and you've got, neurons talking to neurons, and, that communication is what gives us our thoughts and experiences and actions and sensory input and all of that. And what serotonin does is it creates a state in the brain that allows those communication pathways to sort of be rewired. So instead of, neuron A talking to neuron B, and they're the only two neurons that have ever talked to each other, in that little arena, all of a sudden now neuron A is like, hey, I can talk to all these other neurons. I want to talk to these people, these guys and these guys. And so you have this rewiring of the communication pathways in your brain, which for somebody who's struggling with post-traumatic stress, that can be super helpful because you want to repackage the traumatic memories and kind of separate them from that massive stress response. So SSRIs, although they get a bad rap, they can be helpful in that rewiring or repackaging of trauma, but they're only helpful or effective if you're going to actually do the work. So if you're going to go to therapy and try to access those memories and separate them from that massive stress response, because without that work, they're just kind of, they're enabling neuroplasticity, but you're kind of doing the same thing. And so the old habits are being reinforced. So again, just to this is the thing I hate about, our healthcare system is it's like docs are so overwhelmed. They're just like, hey, here's a bunch of SSRIs, take this many, just go get out of here. And it's like, right. Cool, I'm going to do this. But like, if I don't have any other guidance, is it going to do anything? And the answer is probably not, like you've got to have more with it. It isn't just, I take these pills and my brain fixes itself. Like, and that's what people expect because they don't.
That's what I was going to say. Exactly. Because that's kind of where that's kind of just, I say that because that's kind of where I was at in the sense that like in the military, it was kind of like, just give me something that's going to fix it. Yeah. Like, cause I don't got time right now. I gotta do this other stuff. Right. So just give me like vitamin M, which we call Motrin. Mm-hmm. That's what like we would do. We'd be in pain, take some Motrin. I remember having like big old things. So you kind of get in that mindset, like just give me something that's gonna fix it. I got to keep going. Right. And that's kind of that. Even when I admit, like took myself as like, hey man, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I need something. I don't know what's going on. And they were like, we're gonna put you on this. And I was like, I don't want to be on any meds at all. I do not want to be on and I was pretty adamant about that. But I was at the point too. I was like, however, I don't know what's going on. So I'll do what you tell me. But somehow it was important to me to understand that those meds, and I know it's not the same for everyone, but those meds were temporary. That's kind of what I went into it with. Go ahead. Sorry.
An example of where meds had to affect like my life. Mm-hmm. Long story short, I got locked up when I separated the military, and they said I had manic episodes with bipolar tendencies. Take this medicine, and then we're gonna monitor you, and then by the time we figure out you're good, you go get out, see the VA. I went to the VA. Psychiatrist, they're like, well, this is what they said. I was like, do you want to hear my story? No, just take these and just push me on out the door. And I was like, wow. I took them initially. I had to take them to get out where I was. Sure. But once I was on my free will, I was just like, no, I'm just smoke weed. I don't really know what these are. Yeah. And when I do take them, I just feel like laissez-faire. But when I take them, it just makes me sit down and don't do anything.
Totally. Yeah. It's like you're a shell of who you were.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, sure, you're not, anxious and maybe you're not depressed, but you're not feeling any joy either. It's like this super fucking catatonic state of, like you're just kind of okay with everything, but you're never gonna feel those incredible emotions that are so important for being a fucking human, which is those peaks of love and joy, along with the pain. And the pain has to be there to know the high moments too. I mean, it's all complementary, but like those pills they're just removing the bad and they're preventing you from feeling the good. And you as a human being and your like incredible creativity and your purpose and your passion and all of those things just aren't there anymore, And
the stigma of, if you don't take these pills and everybody knows that you prescribe them, you just like, you're an outcast. But
right.
Okay, if you smoke weed, okay, you're good. Now you're smoking weed. But
Yeah.
he's not taking these pills. So if he's not taking these pills, we're not dealing with him. Like,
I think that's a fair point, because in the sense of like, why is it okay? And we could probably go down a rabbit hole on this, but it's like cannabis in general, like if it's used in the proper way, at least, I mean, of course, if it's not laced with anything else or anything like that, like if it's just in its pure form, I think that does have some properties that could help with anxiety or what have you. Just like ayahuasca could also have like the healing properties in the brain chemistry level and kind of rewire things in that way. And it's our society, and kind of when we can go into we can go into the history of how Schedule 1 drugs became Schedule 1 drugs and what have you.
Okay.
But fast forward, with all the research shows, it could help us in a lot of ways. But yet as a society, there's still many of us in the sense of they just look at it like, oh, you what? Get away from me. Just go over there. You know what I mean? And it's like, what the fuck? I mean, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, are we looking at we're not looking at the individual anymore and trying to help them heal. We're looking at just like what we feel, what we kind of put on them as like what we want them to be.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't know. That's just me though.
Yeah. It's almost like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Like you're an outcast and you have a stigma if you take prescription meds. But if you say, fuck that, no, I'm gonna take my healing into my own hands, and most people turn to cannabis because it is the most accessible and it is effective. I mean, there are a lot of people who use it for various things and it works. And that's the most accessible thing that they have. And so people turn to that, but then it's like, then people are like, oh, well, you're just the stoner veteran. And it's like, whoa, like you just can't win, like meds, you get a stigma. If you're smoking weed, you get a stigma. And again, like to your point, the weed thing is like marijuana, cannabis, even CBD is still like, there's still a stigma there because this is a whole other episode, but the war on drugs created stereotypes around these substances to make people immediately judge someone who takes a psychedelic or smokes weed or, tries to actually use something natural and from the earth to help heal themselves, which has been used in ceremonial settings and, ancient traditions for very long periods of time. And then, the drugs happened and all of a sudden these things are banned and they're given these bad raps, and yet they're very effective and like really good tools for some people. But like, what do you expect people to do when these pills, like I have so many stories of friends who come out and the VA gives them like 10, 15, 20 pills to take a day, and each one is counteracting a symptom of the other. And they get to this point, like when people commit suicide, the majority of people are on substances. It's either alcohol or a bunch of drugs. Like they're not in their right mind. They're so over medicated or, medicating themselves with the wrong substances like alcohol. And they're not making decisions based out of a rooted, grounded, loving place. Like it's a place of pain and messed up neurochemistry because of what they've got on board in their bodies. And it's like when you treat people that way, they're, this crisis of suicide, is a result of not having enough tools. But of course, for folks who don't, go that route and who are still here, they're going to find a way to help themselves. They're going to try. So let's talk about what these tools might be. And if weed and cannabis is one of those things for a lot of people, then let's make it more accessible and people in education. And let's talk about all these other tools too. I think that we're just doing it wrong in so many ways. And so, I commend people who do find something like you guys, like it's like mountain biking or weed or whatever it is, something that's going to help me feel more me, help me feel like I can self-regulate. Like, that's critical in order for a person to feel like safe in the world and that they can move forward and really explore their passions or their gifts or whatever it is. Like, you got to have certain things met first. And, you know, like, there are different ways to do that work for different people. So I'm glad that you guys found stuff that works for you.
I can say this now. I flourished the most when I was in the service, when I was smoking weed. For like a span of 7 years, I figured out an algorithm. I flourished the most. I'm not even gonna lie, but when I didn't, it was very, 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 very hurtling. I'll say that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, it was kind of just, I got to the point where I know. Well, let me back up a little bit. One of the first things you're talking about, like where people feel bad if the treatment doesn't work or what have you. When I first kind of went down this road, one of the first therapists I met, he was a doc on base or what have you, and it's kind of like one of the first gates, if you will. And he was like, "Oh yeah, you do this treatment, you're gonna be healed in 90 days or less." And I was like, "Fuck, I hope so." I mean, that sounds like a damn good idea, like, you know, like a goal. But honestly, I was at the point where I wasn't sure if I wanted to be like healed, because I felt like by accepting this healing, then I would be accepting what I help do, if that makes sense. And I wasn't there. Like, my stuff kind of goes into the moral injury / you know, PTSD. Like, you know, PTSD has an umbrella of various different things. Moral injury is one of those. Can you break that up a little bit for like people listening, like what falls under the umbrella of that?
And I also heard you leave the D off as well.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, if you want to kind of touch on that as well.
Absolutely. So PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, that's the term given to the clinical diagnosis of this post-traumatic stress response. And there are certain criteria a person has to meet, which I'll describe in a second. But the reason I leave the D off when talking about it, I get that it is a disorder of the stress response system, but because of the way our healthcare system is and the way that we deal with, you know, quote unquote disorders or diseases in our society, I leave the D off because people have a tendency to identify with their diagnosis in our world, because it's like it's forced upon them. It's like you're judged all of a sudden. It's like, well, I have diabetes, or I suffer from depression, or I have this. It's like, I don't see the person anymore. I just see this diagnosis or this disease, and it's super fucked up. And it's no one's fault. It's like, you know, people do this unconsciously sometimes. So it's not like people are maliciously like judging others for a diagnosis or a disease. It's just become part of our culture, which is super messed up. So I leave the D off when talking about it, so that way people who are suffering from it maybe reframe how they think about it, instead of saying, I have PTSD and this is like who I am and it's going to be a lifelong sentence and, you know, all of that shit, which is super unhelpful. I try to just reframe it as, you're dealing with post-traumatic stress, which is a haywire stress response system to something traumatic that happened to you. And you couldn't have prevented it. It's not something that you had control over, and it's healable. In the same way that you could, you know, if you fucked up your knee and you had to get surgery and you had to heal, you're probably, knees and backs and shoulders, right? Like everybody in the military comes out and they're just jacked up. So we all know what that's like. You're going to rehab it if you expect it to get better. So you're going to take it easy. You're going to go to PT. You're going to try to do things to get that knee or that, you know, joint back to normal. But we don't think about the brain and the nervous system in the same way. And we should. These are, you know, these things, this, you know, post-traumatic stress and even traumatic brain injury, these are injuries that are healable. And we need to think about it as, I'm, you know, going through whatever therapy, I'm taking psychedelics, I'm exercising and spending time in nature. These are part of my brain rehab. This is part of my nervous system rehab. And that is how we should be thinking about it. So with that out of the way, I refer to it as post-traumatic stress. And the way that it works and how it works, just for folks to know, again, so people don't think that it's their fault or they're weak, or, you know, I mean, especially within the military community, people always like to tease each other. And, you know, I think people always, you know, play up the weaknesses, and it's like, oh, if you have PTSD, you know, you're weak and you should have trained harder, you should have whatever. And the truth is that isn't how it works. So when you experience something traumatic, and it has to be traumatic, like people throw the term PTSD around a lot these days. It's like, you know, I think I, you know, have PTSD because, like, you know, my cat ran out into the middle of the road. And it's like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah, I've heard it quite often. People kind of just joke about it, and I mean, they don't know that. Like, I don't, more often than not, I don't say anything. I kind of just, like, you know, listen to it, and I kind of just like let it go off to the side. But it is thrown around a lot, and it's kind of becoming like more mainstream in a sense, because I kind of see more and more people doing it. But to go back to just real quick point, I know when I was leaving the military, and I can go into that whole story maybe on another show, but some people were not getting the benefits they deserved because clinicians, and this is in the military side, this is my experience, this is kind of stuff that I've heard from other people, that they weren't getting the benefits or what have you when they retired because the clinician left the D off the end of it.
Oh,
and
really?
It was, yeah, so it's like, so it's PTS, but it's not PTSD, so therefore you don't get, you know, whatever when you're getting out. And I was like, that is fucked up.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it could be because they didn't meet all of the symptoms. And so I can describe that if you want. Like,
Yeah, sure. I mean, because from my
Yeah.
side of the house, it was like, that's fucked up. I mean, this dude's done like 20 years, 19 or whatever at the time that guy was in.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what I mean? But I didn't know the whole story. And maybe you can educate me. You can educate others as well. That's why we got you on here.
I'm happy to talk about it, but I don't know that it's, you know, I mean, it's so hard to know what was going on there. It's like maybe they were told, hey, we're diagnosing too many people with PTSD. You got to cut down on the numbers, or, you know, hey, you know, there's a whole subversion of post-traumatic stress disorder that's just PTSD. You know, I have no idea what they were told.
But just very, very high level.
Yeah, I mean, it is fucked up in the sense that even though there are subdivisions of PTSD as the clinical diagnosis, like all of them affect your life in a massive way. So it's still debilitating. Like, I don't care if you have full-blown PTSD according to the criteria, or you're missing one of the criteria, the others are still really affecting your life. And so you should have, you know, again, it's like we made up these criteria and we still are trying to understand what post-traumatic stress really is. So to meet the clinical criteria, you have to have experienced a traumatic event. So again, in the moment, it might have just been stressful for you, and you may not have realized that that's going to trigger the development of PTS later. It might just be like, "Ooh, glad I made it through that," but it could go on to, you know, help somebody develop PTS later, and we don't really know why that is. But essentially, it's a traumatic event where, you know, your life is threatened, or you feel like there's a lot of, you know, overwhelming danger, just a significant threat to you or to someone, you know, that you're either witnessing or a part of, or it can even be something that somebody else went through, but they're telling you about and describing, where you have a very serious response to, like, feeling like you were there. There's so many different ways that a person can experience what is traumatic for that person that we still don't really understand how to, you know, quantify that. But it has to start with a traumatic experience. And then the symptoms you have to have that are required for this diagnosis include symptoms of intrusion. So flashbacks, nightmares. Those are the two primary ones where, you know, you don't have control over re-experiencing these stressful events, where all of a sudden you're walking down the street and you have your heart rate increases, and you're thinking about this moment, and your stress response is just like activated. Same thing with nightmares. The second criteria is symptoms of avoidance. So I'm going to change my life and the things that I would normally do to avoid things that are going to trigger me. So I don't want to be around loud noises. I don't want to be in crowds. I'm not going to a restaurant. I'm not, like basically avoiding the things that, we're going to bring these things on. The third criteria is negative changes in mood or cognition. So that could be depression. It could be a negative outlook on life. It could be, everything sucks. I'm a piece of shit. My family life is awful. It's just like that. Or it could also have to do with memory. So I can't focus. I can't remember shit. Like what's going on with the brain? It just is, like.
Yeah, I was laughing because it's like that.
Check.
Yeah, check. Sometimes I'll just be walking in the kitchen and I'll just be standing there and I forget how I got there. I'm just like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, what was I doing here? And that happens to me a lot, forgetting keys and stuff like that. I mean, that could be other stuff too. Like before I would associate it because I went like a lot of years without like proper sleep.
Yeah.
And once I kind of got that in order, and then I quit drinking. I mean, I have a couple of drinks every now and then now because I kind of respect it now. But going back to everyone's on some type of substance to deal with it. I think people lean on alcohol because that's the most accepted substance.
It is.
And that's probably one of the most dangerous ones too. I'm not judging or anything, but because I was there. But that's kind of, you come back from deployment or wherever and you just start drinking and everyone's there with you. It's a community around it. And it's kind of one of the most accepted ones while you're in the military for any type of events or anything. Everything kind of focuses, like circles around alcohol.
Yeah.
So
it's so true. Like, I want to come back and touch on that. I just want to round out the
symptoms. Sorry.
Yeah, but that's really important. So let's go back to that. But the fourth, so after the changes in mood and cognition, the fourth criteria is hyperarousal. So hypervigilance, hyperarousal, you startle, like if somebody were to come over and tap you on the shoulder, you'd kind of startle, you can have these outbursts too, that are related to that. So those are the criteria and they have to persist for like 30 days or longer. So it's not like you have this experience once and you're diagnosed. It's got to be a recurrent thing. But so like a person could have most of those symptoms and maybe not all of them, and they don't get the diagnosis and maybe therefore they don't get disability related to it. But there are things called subthreshold post-traumatic stress disorder, which maybe some docs are now referring to just as PTS, but it's basically like you meet most but not all of the criteria. But oftentimes people who are diagnosed, they also suffer from anxiety and depression. Substance use disorder, drugs and alcohol are super common because people are trying to self-medicate to manage this like new body that they're in that they can't control. That's a really scary environment to be captured in. Like you're stuck in this body that you can't control and it doesn't feel good. So people often turn to substance use to self-medicate. Alcohol is one of the worst things we could be doing. And
especially on SSRIs.
Yeah, and it's so accepted.
And I did it. That's why I'm saying like I know what you're saying. Like because I made it a lot of the most common pitfalls that most veterans did. I'm pretty damn sure I hit every one of them.
I chose alcohol. Didn't take the pills with the alcohol. I was like, I'm gonna choose my kidneys. I'm cool with that or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's good. You were smart enough to do that. I wasn't.
I was like, I'm not both. Not too. This is too many chemicals, and I don't even know what these are. They're telling me to take. Nah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Exactly. It's so true. I mean, like in my own life experience, that's what I turned to as well. It's like it's easier to be a functional alcoholic and be accepted in society than it is to admit that you have a problem and you need help and you don't know where to go for help. And because we don't have any, like people don't have any answers readily available. There's still a stigma attached to it, but there's no stigma attached to drinking constantly. And I mean, it's just we have an addiction culture and it's just part of it. The other thing that which is, it's super messed up, we got to change that, but like the other thing that people don't understand is that you may be suffering from a traumatic brain injury and that the symptoms of TBI look like post-traumatic stress a lot of times. And so people are, dealing with an injured brain that needs to be healed, and they're getting pumped full of medications because they think it's PTS and they need to be on all these drugs, but it's not allowing the brain to heal. And so your TBI could be contributing to all of these other
So
things.
you're like compounding the problem by trying to fix it.
Yeah. And like
the improper way.
Absolutely. And with TBI, substance use disorder is also huge. It runs rampant. Suicide between TBI and PTS is also, there's a huge link there. And it's something that like, it affects more people than they realize. And again, like healing the brain is so important. And that's what we should be focusing on for some folks. And PTS could also be there. You could have both. I mean, it's possible to suffer from all of that, but like you gotta really focus on healing the brain. And the worst thing that I'm sure you guys can relate to is that your sleep is so messed up. The one thing that we all need when we're in that place is sleep to repair the brain. But guess what? You can't sleep when you've been diagnosed with these things and you've got this history of brain injury and you're on all these meds, and then you're also, substance use, alcohol screws up your sleep. And
then they gave you a sleep apnea machine just so you can make sure you get your 30%. So you're trying to sleep with that shit too. It's terrible.
I know.
I got one of those too.
Yeah. It's so brutal, right? Like, how the hell are people supposed to heal and fix themselves when it's like, yeah, there's so much there that
there is. And it's like, if we constantly just address the symptoms and not really try to understand the problem at the root of it, then we're just going to kind of keep going in circles with it, unfortunately. Yeah. But I'm glad like there's folks like yourself that are kind of going out and actually, and I've been doing a lot of like reading recently. I forget what, but microdosing and kind of going with the ayahuasca thing, and I'm gonna let you finish your thought, but like just kind of like lead us in a different direction. But like LSD and microdosing, like I know people hear that, probably listen to like, oh, that's it, I'm done. I'm not gonna listen to this anymore. Yeah. But really, in microdosing and psilocybin and what have you are showing like with therapy, along with therapy, it's not like just do it on your own and kind of, everything's going to be good like the pills. You have to kind of like process and stuff, but they're helping veterans and other people with any type of trauma or what have you, kind of process that stuff in I don't want to say in a quicker time, but the sessions are a lot more productive than any other like CBT, CBT, or any other methods that are out there right now. Maybe the combination of the two. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be. Can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just kind of combine the two.
Yeah.
What? You can't throw the baby. What you
I
say?
don't know. It's something that's just kind of in my cache somewhere, and it kind of just came out.
Like
so
it was the right.
Write that down.
Yeah. So I'm not advocating throwing babies out. I'm just saying. Keep your babies in the bath.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a really good perspective that you're offering on maybe alternative therapies like psychedelics and plant medicines, because the idea so I will say I'm a huge advocate. We all grew up in the DARE era where it was like drugs are bad.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And so like I
had the t-shirt.
Yes, right.
I joke with it sometimes. I'll crack an egg like, this is your brain on drugs, and I'll make you breakfast just because that's like so seared in my head.
Yeah,
kids today will never know what that means.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's so messed up because it made me like just like completely judge substances, but also never have any curiosity around it. Like I got 3 older brothers, and I grew up with them like trying everything under the sun, and so I would just like stand back and be like, you good? Like, what's going on in there?
Right.
Never wanting to try it myself. But these plant medicines, these substances, the classic psychedelics have such therapeutic potential. It's insane that we banned them and we haven't been doing research on them for decades, and we're just getting back to it. Because I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that happens for folks dealing with traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress is inflammation. You have brain inflammation and you have body inflammation. And when you can't suppress that, I don't care what else you're doing to help yourself, you're never going to be back to 100% because inflammation like fucks up everything in the body. So, and how do we deal with inflammation? Well, there are certain
pineapples.
Pineapple, sure. That's we could do that. There's antioxidants in pineapples.
There you go.
Yeah. But it's these medications or these medicines and plant-based substances. They actually help promote an anti-inflammatory state in the brain, and that's really important for allowing the brain to heal, but also allowing the brain to rewire itself. And so, speaking of neuroplasticity, these psychedelics absolutely promote neuroplasticity, giving your brain a platform to rewire itself in a healthy way and to decouple the stress response from a traumatic memory. So for people who are taking psychedelics, to your point, it isn't just meant, like, sure, they have their benefits on their own for, physical things in your body and a psychological shift in maybe some really cool spiritual experience that you have. But they really are effective if you have either, psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, or integration coaching with your experience and with the substance, because it allows you to kind of get in there and access the shit that keeps causing you to relive these experiences and to have them be, hijacking your life. So if you can create an accessible way to like decouple your stress response from these memories and repackage them just as memories, not attached to anything stressful or emotionally charged, that's hugely healing. But it should be done in conjunction with, integration or coaching. And, a lot of people hear, psychedelics are helpful for repairing the brain and the body, and they just go out. Like I live in Colorado, so it's it's like there's lots of support.
A little bit more progressive there.
A little more progressive. These things are easier to come by, and people.
Doug, when they take a trip to Colorado. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
I'll meet you there. Load up.
Yeah, come hang out. But like sometimes people just get it in their head that they're gonna just take a handful of mushrooms or some, a couple hits of acid or whatever it is, and then they're gonna be fixed. And like there's some healing that can go on, but you're gonna go right back to the way things were if you don't work at it.
Especially based off the other reading I've done, and it makes sense if you just think about it, because anything you take, I mean, it has to be within moderation, because your body can only process and tolerate so much, and just like your mind. So if you were to, like in the 60s when, free love or what have you, I mean, you can say what you want about that. However, like if people didn't know how much to take, so they were taking a lot. So you had a lot of people doing some crazy shit, because, I mean, it's just like if you drink too much alcohol, you're going to get drunk, you're going to do stupid shit. Right. So if you think about it from that mindset, and we can actually take it in a proper dose and actually use it as medicine, and I don't know why I did that, as medicine. I don't know, I do that sometimes. It's kind of dumb because I do it at the wrong time, and it's like, are you making fun of it or what?
You're not alone. I do air quotes at the wrong time.
So if you think about it from that standpoint, if you are ingesting too much and your body or your brain can't process it, and you're not in a place, and plus you have inflammation, you have all these other things that are going to contribute to a bad experience, and then time, place, and setting is not right, then you're going to have a worse time, and probably in a worse place than you would be if you actually did your due diligence, found somebody to kind of walk you through, that somebody's experienced with it and knows what the proper dosage for you and your particular situation, and go from it from that standpoint, as opposed to just being like, yeah, let's get fucked up, woo, and then that's usually when the bad trip happens and people are running through fences and all kinds of crazy shit. But I'm just saying, like, time, place, and setting is kind of like one of the not mantras, but one of the things I hear consistently when it comes to psychedelics or what have you, or anything in general, really, or just about anything.
I've had a couple people want to coach me because I've never done psychedelics, and they're like, man, this is what I'm gonna set it up for you. Like, if they're
trying too hard, you might want to, you know what I mean? Like, you have to be in a place where you're ready for it.
People are like extremely surprised that, like, just knowing me and my personality, that I just never tried them before. Like, nah, I want to set up
it's
a perfect situation. So
yeah, it's not time for you yet. That's that's what I feel.
That's a good point. I think like people need to trust their gut, trust their intuition when it comes to this stuff. Like if you're getting a bad feeling or you feel like the time isn't right, don't do it. But like I've found that people are called to it when the time is right. It's almost like the medicines choose you and you don't really have a choice. That's how it happened for me and a lot of friends who made their way to ayahuasca. It's like they became curious, they started looking into it, and then all of a sudden everything came together and the time was right. But it wasn't forced. It wasn't premature. They really like you gotta trust and know that like what you're feeling is right, is actually true for you. It's your truth, and it's like it just hasn't been the right thing for you yet, and maybe it never will be. Maybe it will be down the road. Maybe it will be tomorrow. Like who knows, right? And
who knows?
Yeah, and that's totally fine. And I think that that's something that people should really just pay attention to. Pay attention to what's really truly going on for you. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and it's kind of, I don't know, for me personally, it was kind of coming to a place where and not to say that I've done it, but I was coming to a place where now I'm able to like logically process and make a good decision based around it. When I was on SSRIs, when I was, drinking, what have you, or in whatever place I was in, I wasn't in the right state of mind to be making it. And I didn't understand it because I didn't even understand myself, if that makes sense. Yeah. And that's still a process, but
you gotta know how you wired. Gotta know.
Yeah. And then I really believe in going off your gut, and kind of the more I've kind of come out of that, and that like this new understanding of myself and where I'm at right now. I'm not saying that like I still have issues. I still wake up sometimes where I feel like dog shit, like mentally. Yeah. And there's times where I still wake up in the middle of the night. And that's all exacerbated by like stress or what have you. That's kind of like the common thread that I find. So
I can't let you walk over that. I mean, you know what it feels like often? You pick up Lotus's dog shit a lot?
Sometimes,
Okay.
Sometimes I find it in the bed. Sometimes I don't. I don't know. Lotus is my dog.
That wasn't a question though. But you got a big question though. We both got a big question.
What is the big question?
What is the big question? You forgot already?
Oh, okay, I'm tracking. So having said all that, and I know we're kind of pressed for time, but so if like your outlet, so if we kind of discuss like what some of the things in the weeds of how to understand PTS and like some of the methods around it, to the new methodologies to try to help people expand on it. But so let me ask you a personal question, probably a more serious question is, what type of bike do you ride? And
so I ride a Scott Genius. It's a pretty sick bike. It's great for riding out here in the Rocky Mountains. Full suspension, like all the bells and whistles. It is the only thing that keeps me alive is because of my bike is overbuilt. Like everything on that bike to save me when I get into trouble out here, because things can be rocky and steep and just super fun and rowdy. But yeah,
if you stay ready, you never have to get ready. So
yeah, that's true.
That's so true.
So
yeah.
How long you been riding?
So I've been riding since I moved to Colorado, which has been 10 years.
Oh, wow. So
yeah.
It's probably pretty good then.
I mean, I kind of hit a plateau, and I will say that it's
literally?
Like, actually, yes, there is one right. Like,
yeah, I'm pretty sure I'll find it. Boom.
Yeah, no, it's, I used to race enduro, and it
Nice.
that was what made me better very quickly. And then when I stopped racing, because I hate being hurt, and I broke my clavicle twice, and and I hit my head super bad. I got a gnarly concussion and put my teeth through my lips and like split my
different type of piercing right there.
Yeah, it's bad. And I hated being injured and pushing the envelope that much. And so I just kind of dialed it back, and I ride for fun, and sure, I like to go fast, but I also just keep it under control. So like these days it's more about having fun, getting out, like being in nature, getting exercise, and just like, yeah, having a good time. And I'm not trying to like race and, you know, prove anything anymore. So.
Right. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like I just found racing. Not, I don't say I found it, but I just started racing, and I don't know if it's kind of dangerous in the sense that I think I have I don't know, maybe it's just the adrenaline aspect of it that I find like I'm attracted to in that sense. And
Yeah.
it's just kind of pushing myself harder and harder. I don't know if that's a military thing or what, but I just always want to try to push the envelope, so to speak. And
That's a youth thing. That's a youth thing. Hey,
right.
thing.
But
Good
it's kind of like I want to kind of get out of like I don't want to go through those injuries or what have you. And I kind of want to get out of the game before it's too late. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Because I don't want it to become like obsessive, because I kind of see that. Like I never used to look at Strava before, but now I see my times and I'm like, something in me is like, I want to go faster. And it's not about anybody else. It's just like I know I could beat that time. I know I could beat that time.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
that could be addictive on its own. So I don't want it to take away from the love that I have for writing.
Right.
And to kind of circle back is I don't want to get away from the nature aspect of it, of just enjoying it, going for just a ride and just kind of taking the sights. Because I usually like to stop and I kind of just sit down. Sometimes I guess go hippie-ish with it, but I'll meditate or try to, you know, just sit there and just kind of take it all in and then keep writing. And it's just like trying to really appreciate the little things of being outside. And that's kind of brought me like where it's almost like it's kind of taking me out of our more streamlined world, as far as like before I used to be really into football, like watching like the Cowboys. I was a big Cowboys fan. You could ask him. Actually, they got me a going away thing, a sweater. I still have it. It was like a Cowboy sweater from like back in 2010 or whenever we were deployed. But yeah, there we go. So, but ever since I kind of like came to this different understanding and what have you, and I started writing up, like it's like all the materialistic things other than my bike just kind of just going by the wayside, and I'm kind of just more focusing on being outside. And I want to start like rock climbing, and there's all these things that I want to do now that I didn't want to do before, and I think that's a good thing. You know, it's kind of teaching me how to live without certain things, you know. And I think the military had a lot to do with that too, kind of making you appreciate by seeing the way other people lived in other countries and people not having running water. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that even like rock climbing and like picking up some of these other activities, it's important because they're all like things that really ground you in your body. Like when you're moving or you're spending time in nature, you're climbing, you're riding a bike, like all of these things are really grounding you in your body. You're feeling your movement. And I think for folks who have struggled with PTS or even traumatic brain injury to some extent, I think sometimes you can get you sort of disconnect from your body. Like you stop paying attention. You don't want to be in your body because it's the source of unpredictability and stress and scary shit, right? And so the more that we can do these practices, especially climbing, because it's like your whole body and you're feeling into everything that you're doing, it can be really healing for a lot of people. And it's like reconnecting with your body in a positive way and learning that it can be a safe place and an enjoyable place to like be rooted instead of like disconnecting and cutting off and always living in your head. So I think that that's really cool. And it's sort of like a natural progression to, you know, gravitate towards some of these different things.
Right. And our only hope, right, when we actually first started talking about doing this podcast was to get more people riding outside. That was kind of our basic idea, and then just kind of raise awareness. You know, we talked about like raising awareness for suicide awareness and what have you, based off like my personal experience and other people that I served with, you know, taking their lives, unfortunately. And it was just kind of like, I got to do something. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, if you watch a documentary, it's kind of like our thing is like, all right, well, now that you have that information and you fact checked it or whatever, now what are you going to do about it? It's good to know the information, but you have to be prepared to actually do something with that information and try to help others find but at the same time, they have to understand that they have to do the work themselves. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. What'd you say about a frog? You can give a frog $1, you can't make him sing.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. But
Yeah.
I know you're pressed for time. You're a busy person, so I really appreciate having on. I hate to kind of like stop this abruptly, but I hope to have you on again, and we can kind of unpackage this a little bit more,
Yeah.
and kind of get into a little bit more stories of both on either side, and kind of just continue the discussion, and maybe talk about some things that you're working on, in the future
Absolutely.
or at that time.
Yeah,
But
it's been an absolute pleasure, and I would love to come back anytime and have conversations about any of this stuff, or even things we haven't talked about. So yeah, thanks for having me on. You guys are awesome to chat with.
For sure, appreciate it. And once again, drop your info so those listening, even on the podcast, can get in contact with you. He tried to do it, but you probably know it better than he does.
yeah, I suck at it. Work in progress.
Yeah, these days I think probably Instagram's the easiest way. I don't really do much on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. But yeah, Doc Pate. There's a period between Doc DOC and Pate PATE. It's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me and see what I'm up to. And I share some information on the page as well, just about some of these same topics in some sessions. And yeah, that's probably the best way.
We appreciate it. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. But thank you again for your time, and I look forward to having you on again. If you have any questions or anything and would like to reschedule, or we can talk about that afterwards, I'll be in touch.
Okay. Absolutely.
But be safe. Have a good day today, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you again.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Yes.
See ya.
Yeah, so that was Doc Pate at on Instagram, doc.pate. As she said, it was a blast having her on. I know for some of you listening, I know it was kind of like, how does this relate to mountain biking? Well, I mean, quick background. I mean, I'm pretty sure you guys know we are veterans as well, and one of the things for this platform is to kind of bring awareness and also kind of talk about some of the things that we are interested in as well, for either personally or people that we know of, and just trying to bring that conversation forward to try to help those have more options on how to participate and take charge of their own healing, if you will, whether that be physical injuries or a mental injury or anything like that. So I mean, I really appreciate her providing us the opportunity to interview her. What did you take from that, man? What was the kind of big takeaways for you?
I got 2 pages of notes over here. What do you mean?
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
Oh man, yeah. I just took down how what's pretty much classified as like PTSD. You know what I'm saying? So,
And honestly, I never understood that. Like, I would hear people say that, but I was just, in my mind, I was like, well, maybe it's just a place where they're at, where people come to, where they're like, hey, it's no longer PTSD and now it's PTS because I'm in a different part of my healing. I really didn't know, and I really didn't know how to ask that question to somebody when they say that, because not that I identified. I mean, I'll be honest, there was a point where I was starting to identify with it, but then I kind of came to the understanding that that's what they need. And I say they, like medical professionals, need to do to put a name on it, because when you're first going through it, at least for me, even when they told me, I didn't believe it for a long time. I was just like, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't sound right, whatever, because I was comparing myself to others, and that's not a place where you should be doing it. And I understood that, like, okay, that's what it is. And luckily I never identified with it as like, defines me as a person. This is going to be like, oh man, like I'm part of this. Like, and I feel that some people do that, not do that, but they do that.
But like one thing that I pride myself on is like not just one thing define them. That
Right.
can be a characteristic, but that one thing does not mean it's going to define you.
And that's I think that's a big takeaway from this, is like, for those of you guys or gals listening, guys and girls listening,
Yes.
gals, like, that's important. And that's not even what just like, it's any diagnosis. You shouldn't, it doesn't define you as a person. That's just kind of part of your life for that time being, depending on what the diagnosis is. don't let it define you. Don't let it take hold of you, because once your brain accepts, once your mind and your body accepts what, like, that diagnosis as you, then it's almost like a wrap. I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of, you'll always be that.
Yeah. The
So you
ceiling
kind of just,
roof. There is nowhere to grow.
yeah, exactly. It
Ain't
kind of just,
nothing.
it's like it handicaps you mentally, in the sense, because you start going into that victimhood, and that is a part of the healing process, I would imagine, for some people. But the goal is to kind of get out of that and kind of be who you were before everything, or before whatever has happened. I understand that there are some diagnoses that are terminal and what have you, but even with that, I hope that people can come to a place where it still doesn't define them. They can still try to do what they need to do. Like, I have friends now that were diagnosed, or I have a friend now that was diagnosed with something like terminal, but through his perseverance and doing things that he loves, like, as far as like writing and what have you, I feel that has enabled this person to sustain and push past what people expected and timelines that they had given this person. And I think that's huge, because your mind does accept, and it will become whatever you tell it to be, whether positive or negative. And unfortunately, it's more easily acceptable to accept the negative part of it, as opposed to the positive side, because we doubt ourselves and we're our worst critics a lot of the time. So
True.
that's
It's
kind of one
true.
of the big things I took away from it. And I really hope to have her on again, and to kind of unpackage this a little bit more, and kind of get more into the weeds of
I still
how. Go
still
ahead.
had questions I needed to write down. I mean, I wrote down. I didn't get to ask. So yeah.
Yeah. So we'll definitely like save those, and then when we have her on again, we'll definitely get into those questions as well. This was kind of like a jump off episode, if you will. I hope she can become a regular guest of the show, and we can kind of tackle this and try to answer people's questions, and go from there.
For sure.
So what do you got? What do you got planned for today? You can go for a ride.
Man, dude, sun's coming up. We're gonna go for another ride somewhere, man. That ride I went the other day, it was awesome. It was like downtown Kansas City, hustle and bustle.
I saw that, dude. What's up with were those dead fish in there? What's up with that?
Oh, trash.
That was trash.
Yeah, that's like the overflow from somewhere, and it just
Oh,
goes right through the middle of the city for like probably about 7 miles.
damn. That's
Yeah,
was it trash
just
everywhere, or just y'all have a big
yeah.
rainstorm recently?
Nah, it was just trash everywhere. That's why it wasn't nobody down there. Like at
Yeah.
first when I went down where the entryway is, I was like, man, it's nice down here. They had the little gondola boats. And then more and more, I was like, man, ain't nobody down here. It's kind of weird.
Right.
Then the more I kept going, the smellier it got, and I saw the trash and saw like remnants of street people. I was like, that's why ain't nobody down here.
Yeah.
And where I came up at, it was like in the inner city heart of Kansas City, Missouri, like the hood. I was like, oh, let me turn around real
So
quick.
you hadn't been to that area before?
Not on my bicycle, no.
Uh,
So when I came up, I knew exactly where I was. I was like, oh shit, let me get the fuck out of here.
I'm gonna have to be walking back and might get my bike jacked.
Yeah, luckily I keep my bike dirty, man. But every time, like, I was at the light and this dude had another bicycle, raggedy piece of shit. He was like, man, that's a nice ass bike. And I was just like, okay, man,
Oh, he
thank
was
you.
telling you, or he was just looking at you?
Nah, he said it. He was
Oh,
like, huh, bicycle. I was like, huh,
he wasn't
okay.
like Debo, was he?
He was smart. I mean, I could have took him, but that's not the point. If he sees it, everybody else is seeing it, but
It'd be like
it
both our
was
bike. Just keep it at my house.
cool. Yeah. But it was cool, man. What about you? What you got up for today?
I'll probably try to get this video, this processed and what have you, by tonight, because tomorrow I'll probably start getting ready for the race this weekend, Flat Creek Crossing. I'm looking forward to that. I'm still on the fence whether I'm gonna do it on my hardtail or not. I don't know why. Like, I just feel like I'll be faster, but at the same time, it's like a little bit more dangerous to do it on my hardtail because some of the lines are really like there's a lot of chunky stuff, so you kind of be rattled around, and I'm not clipped in. I'll be riding flats, so that means that my feet can come off a lot quicker. But at least with the full suspension, I can have the absorption, so it's not kicking my legs off as bad. But I haven't decided that. I might wait to the last second. But so today I need to go get some parts. Like I need a new derailleur hanger for my bike, and hopefully my bike shop has that. And then make sure I got everything good to go for this weekend. And then hopefully get a ride in today or tomorrow. So that's kind of what I got going on. And yeah. Oh, I also got to push out the other video this week too. It's pretty much all the way done. I just got to do some voiceover for the ride series or the race series or the Victory Racing.
Okay.
And I got a call. So it's just a lot of phone calls, setting up the next podcast with the guests. But they can manage it in their schedules, and we can link them up with us and go from there. But today I really enjoyed today.
Yeah, but man, enjoy the day, brother. Be safe.
You enjoy the day. Hey guys, thanks for taking the time and listening to us today. And if you can, like, just click that subscribe button, or you can
like it, share it.
Like it, share it. If you feel that this information is not good for you, but it could be good for someone else that you know is trying to understand or have other alternatives to try to find a way out of their own darkness or their own like personal struggle, please forward it to them. And if you like, just one tip for some of these podcasts that are kind of like an hour or so, just listen to it in bites. You're driving somewhere, just kind of listen to it, stop it, and then start playing it again if you feel like it's too long. And yeah, we'll just try to keep them coming. If you guys have any suggestions or ideas that you would like us to interview somebody, or a subject that you want us to cover as far as like latest bikes or full suspension or anything like that, or just anything in the bike world, or anything that you feel that people could benefit from, that you would learn from, or we would learn something from, let us know in the comments. You can follow me on Instagram at Crashfitties. It's CRASH. I'll put something on the bottom.
You can follow me. You can put mine on mine. Mine is Casey
Yeah, I'm gonna put a link to both of our Instagram pages, and we just try to bring a different light to it, to have fun, talk about it, open it, unpackage it, and hopefully you guys learn something in the process, just like us. But have a good day, Chug. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you later. All right. Until next time, stay tuned. Yeah, hopefully we have some. Yep, Arkansas Pine Bluff. Is that like a local college, or is it just your high school team?
Shout out to HBCUs. I went there.
It's all relative if you care to ponder, but absence don't always make the heart grow fonder. I don't know what to do, 'cause I feel like I'm missing something. Can't eat or sleep or function your way. I haven't seen myself. Wanna wrap these arms around you. I was lost until I found you. Second time trying this, first time too much focus on the rhyme, and then I'ma be honest, I'm a sucker for the promises, and we said I do, so I figured